want to talk a little bit about the history of science. So some of the things that we want to focus on or highlight are going to be in this presentation. So first off, by 1892, the high school curriculum included a disordered collection of courses with little standardization or focus. So in response to this dilemma, the NEA appointed the Committee on Secondary School Studies, led by Eliot, commonly referred to as the Committee of 10. This conservative committee focused on mental discipline, clearly establishing college dominion over the high school curriculum. In other words, it began to create more organization to the curriculum. Our current model of high school science sequencing, biology, chemistry, physics, can be traced back to that committee. In 1848, the highly influential science organization AAS was formed with the purpose of promoting the development of science and engineering at the national level. We're going to fast forward all the way up to 1957 and the launch of Sputnik. The U.S. public reaction to Sputnik was monumental, and in a single weekend, Americans were wrenched out of a mood of national smugness and post-war material comfort into initial shock and fear of the Soviets' intentions and their ability as they launched Sputnik. Sputnik directly or indirectly influenced nearly every aspect of American life. Prior to this, we do know that things were already developing in the scientific community in the United States, however, as well. But publicly, it really brought it to our attention. And so the golden age of science education began in the late 50s, and it led to the development of curricula in physics, chemistry, biology, and earth science. The role of the NSF, which had been established in 1950 for the intent of research in science and education for those in science education, expanded significantly to include funding and support of the development of science curricula. What we had developed was an alphabet soup curriculum. It was intended to replace traditional teaching consisting of lecture, discussion, and recitation. Reformers planned for up-to-date textbooks, inquiry-based labs, and multimedia packages. Many of these programs were referred to as alphabet soup curriculums. In other words, there was going to be various activities that included but also replaced some of the traditional teaching. ESEA. The first passage of ESEA occurred in 1965 to focus on improving educational opportunities for economically disadvantaged students. Undergoing revisions in 1966 and 1970, the ESEA continued to expand its target population, notably including math and science education. And as we noticed, math and science at this point began to become more and more important in the educational system. The 1983 publication, A Nation at Risk, brought renewed attacks on the American education system. The document accused the American public of squandering the gains made subsequent to the launching of Sputnik. We have in effect been committing an act of unthinking unilateral educational disarmament. Commissioned by President Reagan, the information stated clearly that based upon international tests of achievement, the scholastic aptitude tests, and individual school results, our nation was at risk. Our once unchallenged preeminence in commerce, industry, science, and technological innovation is being overtaken by competitors throughout the world. It was a call to action. So from the 1980s, we'll jump ahead to Goals 2000. The 1980s and 90s heralded the initiative of then-President George Bush and the nation's governors in creating the national education goals. The unprecedented summit of 1989, led by Governor Bill Clinton, established the idea of subject matter standards and performance standards. In concert with these goals, Rutherford at the AAS established Project 2061 with a goal to improve science literacy in America. Specifically that the U.S. would be first in the world in science literacy by the time Halley's Comet returns in 2061. The national education goals were the basis of the Goals 2000 Education American Act signed by President Clinton in 1994. Goal 5, the Educate America Act, states that United States students will be first in the world in mathematics and science education. Next, we have the TIMSS report. The trend in U.S. public education, low test scores, students' avoidance of science and math, a demoralized and weakening teaching staff in many schools, low learning expectations compared to other technologically advanced nations, and being ranked near the bottom in international studies of students' knowledge of science and mathematics. So this is alarming to us as we look at science and math at being key indicators for innovation in the future. Next, we're going to talk about science for all Americans. Education has no higher purpose than preparing people to lead personally fulfilling and responsible lives. For its part, science education, meaning education in science, math, and technology, should help students to develop the understandings and habits of mind they need to become compassionate human beings, able to think for themselves and to face life head-on. In other words, being a scientific thinker is important to your citizenship. It should equip them to be able to participate thoughtfully with fellow citizens in building and protecting a society that is open, decent, and vital. America's future, its ability to create a truly just society, to sustain its economic vitality, and to remain secure in a world torn by hostilities depends more than ever on the character and quality of the education that the nation provides for its students and its children. If we continue to talk about Goals 2000 and the standards movement, The National Science Standards, completed in 1995 and published in 1996, outline what students need to know, understand, and be able to do to be scientifically literate at different grade levels, as well as articulate standards for science teaching, professional development of teachers, assessment, programs, and systems. They are not designed to describe a specific method of teaching, nor are they intended to specify a curriculum, but instead provide criteria that people at the local, state, and national levels can use to judge whether particular actions will serve the vision of a scientifically literate society. And so today we talk a lot about our science standards and how do you meet those science standards. We'll be looking throughout this course at the 2009 standards and at the 2019 standards. Next, let's talk about No Child Left Behind. NCLB advanced the thrust in the United States towards national standards in education, where state standards must align with national, local curriculum must align with state standards, and students are assessed on state tests for proficiency. Yearly tests in reading and math were required for students in grades 3 through 8, and data must be desegregated by race, gender, and income to compare the performance of individual groups. National science tests were first administered in 2007. And so, as you can tell, the standardized tests that we have now in the state help indicate whether we're helping students achieve and understand the standards that have been set forth. ESSA in 2015, the Every Student Succeeds Act, known as ESSA, was signed by President Obama on December 10, 2015, and represents good news for our nation's schools. This bipartisan measure reauthorizes the 50-year-old Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the nation's national education law and longstanding commitment to equal opportunities for all students. It advances equity by upholding critical protections for America's disadvantaged and high-need students. It requires for the first time that all students in America be taught high academic standards that will prepare them to succeed in college and careers. It ensures that vital information is provided to educators, families, students, and communities through annual statewide assessments that measure student progress towards these high standards. More and more different state standards are becoming similar to each other, so it's getting easier and easier to compare state performance. In 2013, we have the NGSS, the Next Gen of Science Standards. They're developed by a collaborative of state representatives led by Achieve, and they outline three intersecting components. So we'll be looking at, again, the 2009 standards, and then we'll be looking at the 2019 standards throughout this course. The 2019 standards throughout this course are built upon the NGSS standards. A goal for developing NGSS was to create a set of research-based, up-to-date K-12 science standards. These standards give local educators the flexibility to design classroom experiences that stimulate students' interest in science and prepare them for college careers and citizenship. And so it's really important that we take a look at how have we taught science in the past, which we'll be doing as we look at the 2009 standards, and then we'll be looking at the 2019 standards and trying to identify how are they different and what is that going to require of us in regards to changing our teaching practices. I hope this presentation has given you a quick history of science education and specifically some of the different policies that are pertaining to that over the last 70 years or so.